Welcome back everybody, and today I want to talk about a really cool topic, that being Echo Fighters in Super Smash Bros. This was a concept that was officially introduced in Smash Bros. Ultimate, but really existed long before that. If you don't know what an Echo Fighter is, it's simply a character that has the moveset that is very similar to another character in the game. This allows them to cut down on the amount of time it takes to create an entirely new fighter, while still being able to pad the roster with new characters. The most famous example of this is Ryu and Ken from the Street Fighter series. They are easily the most famous Echo Fighter duo in history, so much so that they had the same moveset even back in their second game on the SNES. When Smash Bros. Ultimate announced that they would have several Echo Fighters, people were really excited about what possibilities that it could create with that idea. However, a lot of people were disappointed. We were given very cool Echo Fighters for characters like Samus, Ryu, and Simon Belmont, but everyone figured the idea could go a lot further than they did. This is especially true in a day and age where almost every character in pop culture, mainly in video games especially, can get a gender swap counterpart of themselves just for marketing purposes. And this is a good instance of it because most of the time you get to choose and it's not for dumb story or political reasons. Anyways, with that being said, I wanted to go through every character in this game and give them a new Echo Fighter. Or I may give them a pseudo Echo Fighter. What that means is that some characters in this game have very similar movesets, but they may have one or two unique moves to themselves, or they are given different properties to their moves just to make them stand out. They're a way to include another character but make them close enough to the original while still having their own identity and personality. I'm going to go from the top to the bottom of the Smash Bros. Roster, so I'm not going to go by franchise or alphabetical order. First we have Mario, and he already has an Echo Fighter for Dr. Mario, which I think is a very cool choice and works well for him, but if I had to pick another, I would say giving him Cosmic Mario would be cooler. Cosmic Mario shows up in several games, but mainly the Super Mario Galaxy games, as someone that chases Mario down and gives you a little bit of suspense and a reason to rush through the level. You can make him different by giving him the spin jump from Mario Galaxy as well. I don't think it's super necessary to have another version of Mario in this game, but it would be cool. Next is Donkey Kong. I think it's very obvious that Funky Kong would be the perfect Echo Fighter for him. You could give him a few interesting moves that complement his style, like attacks using a surfboard or even the Flame Runner from Mario Kart Wii. But I think this is a pretty simple one. With that being said, I think it would be fine if he did not get unique moves. Donkey Kong is already not super faithful to his games. He's mostly just a big monkey that punches, so it'd be kind of odd to give Funky Kong way more personality and more references to his games than Donkey Kong. However, he is much more of an expressive character than Donkey Kong, at least before Donkey Kong Bonanza came out, which I do think they'll give him that visual style for him anyways. Next we have Link, and I know we already have two other versions of Link, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but if they're going to pick another, I think that Fierce Deity Link from Twilight Princess would be the best version to go with. We have a Link that references most of his other major aspects of his franchise and the time periods in which they take place, and that is the one version of him that does not have a full character. I would love if in the next game they took the three versions of him that are already in the game and made them all very distinct characters. Next we have Samus. I know we already have Dark Samus, which is basically giving Spider-Man a symbiote suit variant in a fighting game, but I would love it if they would add Psylocke from Metroid Prime 3 and 4. He has a few clone moves that you could turn into a parry, but otherwise he's pretty much the same. Although he has a different body shape simply because he's a man and Samus is a woman, but I'm sure they could work around that. Next is Yoshi, and obviously I'm going to go with Birdo here. In fact, she's actually existed much longer than Yoshi, appearing in Super Mario Bros. 2, while Yoshi didn't appear until Super Mario World on the SNES. So I think that it would be very fitting and very simple to change this. For Kirby, I think the most obvious one would be Shadow Kirby. He appears in several games throughout his series and is even featured in the Kirby Fighters franchise, where he's often a boss. You give him one or maybe two different popular copy abilities that Kirby doesn't already use in his moveset to make them a little bit more different. But otherwise, a copy and paste could be fairly simple. Although it would be odd because he has the skin in the game already, and making different versions of him would be difficult. However, what I think would be cool is if they made him look very outer spacey, like a black hole. He looks like that sometimes in the game, so I think they should go with that design. It'll look a lot more distinct than normal Kirby. You could also give him a rainbow variation where it looks like has the Hypernova fruit from Kirby Triple Deluxe. For Pikachu, he already has Pichu, so I don't think there's need to add another one. Needs to be much more to mention here, but I will say that if they wanted to give him a Raichu variant and then spice them up by making him switch between the normal Raichu and Alolan Raichu versions of his evolution, it could be a cool character change, even though I know that's not how it actually works in the games. For Luigi, I think you could either give him a Gooigi skin from Luigi's Mansion 3 and give him one or two moves that are based off his gelatinous form, or you can give him an Echo Fighter of Mr. L from Super Paper Mario. This was a brainwashed version of him in that game. I think Gooigi is a better idea because he's much more of a prominent figure in Luigi's Mansion 3 and is mechanically very interesting. I could definitely see him coming back in other games in the Luigi's Mansion franchise as well. Next we have Ness, and he already has an Echo Fighter for Lucas, but if they're going to pick another character, I'd probably go with a character named Porky. I don't know much about the Earthbound series or the Mother series, so I'll just leave it here. This one was one of my commenters' ideas. I'm not going to say who it is simply because I don't know if they want their name on the internet or not. Next is Captain Falcon, and his most obvious Echo Fighter would be Black Shadow. He's one of the other drivers in this series and could be given Ganondorf's moveset if they ever decide to make Ganondorf an original character instead of a clone of Captain Falcon for some weird reason. Next we have Jigglypuff, and I think that the next evolution of that character, Wigglytuff, is close enough to the original character that it would fit here. I don't want to go with Igglytuff, which is the level below Jigglypuff, because she is already a very small character, and make her even smaller would be very annoying. For Peach, we already have Daisy. I don't think there's really much else to say here. Peach and Daisy are usually just echoes of each other, and I don't think that they need to change that. It works pretty well in this game. I would love if both characters got a lot more personality, but I don't think it's necessary. Next we have Bowser. I think that Dry Bowser would be a great fit. He's usually the final boss of Special Mode in several New Super Mario Bros. Game and Mario 3D Land, and he also appeared in Mario Kart and other games several times. So I think that he is prominent enough to be considered here for an Echo Fighter. Next we have the Ice Climbers, and this is pretty tough. I think you can just put the main enemies, the toppies, in the game and give them hammers and call it a day. Obviously, they're not going to do that, and they're not going to get an Echo Fighter simply because they only ever had one game, and it's clear that they have to stretch to make the good moveset as it is. But it's an interesting thought experiment. Next we have Sheik, and I think Impa would be a great Echo Fighter for her. She's very quick and nimble and ninja-like, so I think that they would work well together. Again, I don't know much about Legend of Zelda, so I could be way off on this mark, but you'll have to forgive me for that. Next we have Zelda. I think they'll either have a champion version of Zelda from Breath of the Wild and the Breath of the Wild Warriors game, or Toon Zelda would be best in my opinion. In fact, back in the days of Smash Bros. Brawl, they were originally going to add her, but they cut her at the last moment. Next we have Marth and his Echo Fighter Lucina. They are related in the Fire Emblem games, so they copy each other's moves a lot. I don't think there's a reason to change that. A lot of the Fire Emblem characters are all echoes of each other to some extent, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them. Next we have Ganondorf, and again, he's an Echo Fighter for Captain Falcon, so I don't think we can really give him another Echo Fighter until he gets his own moveset to himself. Next we have Mewtwo, and I thought it would be cool if they add a Dark Mewtwo from specifically the Pokken Tournament fighting game. This was the big bad villain of that game, and it has a very cool design in my opinion, with all the crystal coming out of its arms and stuff. They already gave him a color palette that matches it to an extent, so completing the costume would be very cool. Next we have Roy, and he has an Echo Fighter in Chrom. Again, these are very similar characters, and that is par for the course for these Fire Emblem fighters. Now for Mr. Game & Watch, we're obviously just going to give him Mrs. Game & Watch. You give her one or two moves that reference other Game & Watch games, but there's really no reason to spend too much time on it. Next we have Meta Knight, and I think giving him a moveset centered around Galactic Knight would be pretty cool. This is a souped up powered version of him that is even more evil than before. You could also make him very interesting by replacing his normal sword with a lance and a shield, and make some of his melee attacks have different properties on them or different hitboxes. I think this would be one of the best ideas of taking a character that is just a different version of themselves with different clothes on and a different weapon, and making them extremely unique from the original fighter. Next we have Pit from Kid Icarus, and I'm obviously just going to pick Dark Pit as an Echo Fighter. They already have it in the game, so we can just leave it there. Next you have Zero Suit Samus. I think it'd be cool if they create a Zero Suit Psylocke as well. Zero Suit Samus isn't really a thing in the video games other than Smash. She was only created for that reason in Smash Bros. Brawl, so if they did a similar thing for him, if he's ever in the game, it would be cool. Next we have Wario, and I think taking the version of him that we have now mostly represents the WarioWare series, so I think that giving him a costume based on his normal appearance in Mario Party and things like that, and references platformers would be cool. I know you are capable of changing it to his normal overalls and hat, but creating a whole moveset around that could be a cool Echo Fighter and a way to differentiate himself from himself, if that makes sense. Next we have Snake from Metal Gear Solid. I think that giving him an Echo Fighter for Big Boss, which is the character that he was based off of in his games. If you don't know, Snake is a super soldier that has enhanced DNA that came from this guy, so I think it would be cool and it would fit quite well. Next we have Ike, and I think that his best Echo Fighter would be a character named Hector. He's a character that is also very strong and uses an axe as a primary weapon. He has very similar moves to him, and would be very cool to have another heavy sword fighter type on the roster. And aside from one attack that Byleth has, the axe archetype from Fire Emblem has not been implemented in Smash Bros. Yet. So I would honestly really like that. Also, personally, I always prefer battle axes to swords, but that's just me. Now we have the Pokemon trainer, and this is an interesting idea that I had. I think it would be cool if they were replaced each Pokemon with different ones that are not super obvious picks. Squirtle will be replaced with Oshawott, who is also a water type Pokemon and very small. Ivysaur would be replaced with Camerupt because the bulb on the back of Ivysaur acts very similar to a volcano already. And Charizard would be replaced with Dragonite. Like I said, these are not super obvious picks as Smash Bros. Characters, but I think that it would be cool to give some odd characters representation from Pokemon here. And you wouldn't have to do too much to change their movesets. They also be very functionally similar to them, even if they don't look the same. Next we have Diddy Kong, and this one is one of the easier ones because he could be replaced with Dixie Kong. They're functionally the same character in their games, and you could just change Diddy's up special into the hairspin that Dixie Kong has. Everyone was predicting that this would happen in the base game of Smash Bros. Ultimate, and I do think it needs to happen. Next is Sonic, and this is where people were really excited when the Echo concept was introduced. Everyone was so hyped at the possibility of Shadow being added as a pseudo Echo Fighter for Sonic, or even Metal Sonic, but this never happened. I think that giving Sonic an Echo Fighter for Metal Sonic and making Shadow his original character would be the best outcome in my opinion. Shadow just has so much more personality and so many powers that make him very different from Sonic. I think it's worth giving him the time of day that he needs and time in the oven to create a specific moveset for him, whereas Metal Sonic is almost exactly the same as Sonic aside from a different power here and there. So I think he would work much better as a standard Echo Fighter, and giving Shadow his own moveset would be much more desirable. Next we have Lucario, and I think that Blaziken would be a fantastic Echo Fighter for him. They're both fire fighting types, and the aura mechanic that Lucario has could be applied to Blaziken as well, and just call it a rage meter or something. You'd have to change a few normal attacks to match his body style better, and give him more kick oriented normals because that is what he's most famous for, but I think it could definitely work. To be fair though, Blaziken has enough going for him himself that he could be his own fighter, and I would not be against that, but we already have Charizard and Incineroar as fire-type starters that are their final evolutions, so I think that Blaziken is very unlikely, especially compared to the other fire-type starters that have come out since Smash Bros. Ultimate that are much more likely. Next we have Olimar. I think that taking Alf, who is already in his selectable costumes, making him an Echo Fighter with a few different Pikmin is really all they need to do. As I've said in other videos, there's no reason they shouldn't be able to do this already. It in fact makes me mad that they don't. Next is Rob. I think giving him a Famicom version of himself, which is what the NES was called in Japan, could be cool. Personally, I actually like this design as a video game console better than the American version. I doubt they'd ever do this because you can already select it as a costume in his moveset, and it wouldn't really actually change anything in his fighting moves, but it's a cool idea. Next is Wolf from Star Fox, and his Echo Fighter would be Panther, which is another evil fighter pilot from his games. Next is Star Fox. I think both him and Falco, I'm going to go with the other two teammates of Team Star Fox, that being Slippy and Peppy. They're basically the same as Fox and Falco, and really have no reason to be super different, as most of these characters' movesets are already completely made up. I don't think there's much more to say here. There's really only one game where these characters are outside of their vehicles, so they'd be virtually the same characters. In fact, I don't know why they haven't given them alternate costumes for them already, like how Olimar and Alf are in the same section instead of Echo Fighters. Now we have Villager, and he already has a pseudo Echo Fighter with Isabella, but I think that Tom Nook would be another great addition to the cast from Animal Crossing. And in fact, I think this is very likely because Animal Crossing has done nothing but grow since Smash Bros. Ultimate, thanks to the pandemic, and it's very likely they'll have another representative in the next Smash Bros. Game anyways. This just makes the most sense whether it's a main fighter or an Echo Fighter. Next is Mega Man. I think that Mega Man X or Proto Man would work best. Proto Man would probably be better just because Mega Man X is usually seen as much taller than the normal version of Mega Man, and Proto Man is also much more distinct visually, so I think giving Mega Man X a costume on top of the normal Mega Man would just be better. You can also work in a couple of extra other abilities that is able to be copied by Mega Man that he takes from other robots and his franchise and add them onto him. Next we have Wii Fit Trainer, and for this character we can either just split the male and female versions up and give them a few extra moves for each variation, or you go with the Ring Fit Adventure character. They're visually very similar, and honestly that character could work as its standard fighter on its own. I think either could be very likely. For Rosalina, you could have Cosmic Rosalina or Ghost Rosalina, whatever it's called. This is the easy mode character in Mario Galaxy games, and you could maybe give her one or two different abilities, but overall it'd be very much the same character. Next we have Little Mac, and I think that Glass Joe would be best fitting for him as an Echo Fighter. King Hippo is another very popular character from that franchise, but I think it's more likely that if they're going to add another representative from that game, they would add him, but he's way too tall and large to be able to be an Echo Fighter for Little Mac. So I think adding Glass Joe or one of the other normally sized fighters would be better. Next we have Greninja. I think that Frogadier, I think I'm saying that right, would be his best Echo Fighter. It's the pre-evolution of Greninja, and I think giving him a few extra water moves would be really cool. That would work best to make him very distinct. They've shown before they will do this with characters like Pikachu and Pichu, so it could work well for him. Next we have Palutena from Kid Icarus. I think that Pseudo Palutena, which is a zombie version of her, would be a great Echo Fighter. Having a zombified version of a main character of the roster would be very cool, and you'd give her a few moves where she summons other zombies to attack the opponents. For Pac-Man, I'm obviously going to go with Mrs. Pac-Man. This is one of the most obvious ones out there, and I'm surprised they didn't just do it for how simple of a change it could be. And now for the verse of the day. Exodus 14, verse 14 says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." I forgot to put this in here during my first recording, but King Dedede would have a Echo Fighter with Robo Dedede from Kirby Air Riders. Next we have Robin from Fire Emblem, and I think that you could again either split up the male or female versions of this character and give each one a few extra distinct moves. Put in the character of Lago, I think I'm saying that right, which is another sorcerer from that franchise. I don't know too much about Fire Emblem, so they may be extremely different, but I think this would still be cool enough. Next we have Shulk from Xenoblade Chronicles, and for him we have Alvis, which is another one of the main sword fighter characters in that game. You could take away the Monado arts from him, or even give him a different mechanic that would be similar to it, but make it unique as well. Or you could change the Monado arts that he already has to boost different aspects of his kit, like making certain moves, such as side special, stronger. Next we have Bowser Jr., and you could again either split up the 7 Koopalings within his moveset, which I don't really think they need to do, or they can make him an Echo Fighter for Dr. Wily. The Dr. Wily that is in the game as an item flies around very similar to him in his flying machine, so it could be a cool way to add a well-known boss from the Mega Man games while not taking too much time away from development. I don't think it's necessary to take the Koopalings that are underneath the tab of Bowser Jr. and make them their own fighters, just because there's 7 of them. I think that having 2 or 3 versions of a character in the game is fine, but when all those characters are very clearly similar and represent basically the same thing, it could be annoying. The 3 versions of Link in the game are odd, but they all represent different games and time periods for the Legend of Zelda franchise, whereas all the Koopalings would just represent the new Super Mario Bros. Games and Super Mario World and Mario 3, and that's kind of it. They're all in the same games, and having one of them really serves the same function, and there's no reason to have all 7 as different characters. I think they work fine for what they are right now. Next we have Duck Hunt, and I actually think that Midna riding a wolf Link would be very cool. You get a couple of different characters to replace the cowboys as well. And you could even replace the gunshots fired by the disc thrown with crossbow shots from the Link crossbow game on the Wii. There are tons of creative things that you can do to replace a dog and a duck and still have them play the same. Next we have Ryu, and obviously he's the most famous Echo Fighter of all time with Kin, but if they want to take it a step further, they could add Akuma. He's always been the 3rd Echo of the trio, and it's kind of meant to mirror the evil side of Ryu to an extent. And while he is still his very own character at the end of the day, they wouldn't have to do too much different from what they already do. They would just have to change a few particle effects to make it look more like the character and types of stuff like that. Next we have Cloud, and I'm going to replace him with Clive from Final Fantasy X. He also has a massive sword and tons of fire abilities that could mimic what Cloud already does. He's also very popular within the franchise, and is even in Tekken 8 as a guest fighter and has appeared in Death Battle before. Next we have Corrin, and I don't really know what else to do with him, so I think just separating the male and female versions of him again would be best. Next for Bayonetta, we have her friend Jean, or John, whatever. They act very similar in the games, and I believe that they're even playable in co-op modes for the game, but I could be wrong about that. Most people bring her up as an extra character to be added from that series, so she makes the most sense to me. Next we have the Inklings, and the Octolings make the most sense as an evil Echo Fighter for them. This is so true that most people were expecting this to be part of the DLC anyway. Next we have Ridley, and I think that a mechanized Ridley with more mechanical sound effects and things like that would be very cool. You'd give him a move where it replaces the fireball spit with a laser to be more spacey and robotic. Next we have Simon, and his obvious Echo Fighter is Richter, and there's really not much more to be said. Now we have King K. Rool, and I think that Lord Friedrich from Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze would be best for him. He's another big guy who commands ships and other enemies like that. He also has a big hat to throw at people. It could be a cool duality type of thing, where King K rules the seas of a tropical area, and Lord Friedrich represents the ruling of cooler waters. That's what it's meant to be in the games because he's a Viking. I honestly don't think they'd have to stretch the moveset too far to make him work. Next we have Incineroar, and I'm going to go with an obvious one here and give him an Echo Fighter from Machamp. He's another big grappler type Pokemon who loves to fight and has a championship belt. And if you replace the fire effects on him, you basically have the same character. Next we have Piranha Plant, and I think they're replacing him with a Deku Baba, which is a very similar plant-like villain in the Legend of Zelda series. Would be really funny. However, I don't expect Piranha Plant to return in the next game anyways, but if they did, this would be a cool idea. Next we have Joker from Persona, and I think that You would be a very good Echo Fighter for him. That's You spelled Y-U. I don't know a lot about Persona, but I know people love this character, and he's actually been around longer, so giving him just a different Persona character to fight next to him, instead of Arsene, would be a great touch. Next we have Hero, and I think just splitting up the different versions of him, and allowing you to select a smaller pool of different spells, which is an ability that he has within that submenu, would be best. Next we have Banjo and Kazooie, and if Duck Hunt wasn't already in the game, I would have put them in, but I think my best comparison for them would be Jak and Daxter. I don't know much about either of these franchises, and I know it's not likely at all that this would happen. I just want to throw out another character that acts as a duo fighter. I know a lot of people would have told me Ratchet and Clank is closer to them, but they're more space themed anyway. Next we have Terry Bogard, and his best friend Rock Howard would be the best choice for him. He already has several similar moves to him in the games, so most of the changes would be mostly visual and a bit to the actual structure of him because he is a bit smaller, but that's not that big a deal. Next we have Byleth, and again, just switching the male and female versions of him would be all that was needed. Now we have Min Man, and I think Springman would be the best character to use as an Echo Fighter from ARMS. He's the closest to her in body shape, whereas a lot of other characters like Master Mummy or Helix are way too distinct in their body shapes and abilities to act as an Echo Fighter. It would also be cool because he could use 3 different arms that Min Min is not able to, so you get more representation from the other abilities that you can use in ARMS. Next we have Steve. I think making Alex the Echo Fighter would be best. It's a very obvious Echo Fighter in the first place, and she's already in the game, so giving her 1 or 2 more moves that makes her a little more distinct would be best. Next is Sephiroth, and I think that this is a bit of a reach, but Virgil from Devil May Cry would be his best Echo Fighter. Virgil is from Devil May Cry and also is extremely fast, very powerful, and uses a very thin katana. You definitely have to change some stuff around to get that to work. I know they're not exactly the same, but it was the closest thing I could find to him. They are very often compared, so I think it would work okay, but it's obviously not going to happen. If they're ever going to add Virgil, firstly they would add Dante before him, but even if they were going to add him after, he would be his own character. He's too distinct to be compared to Sephiroth to that extent. Next we have Pyra and Mythra, and I think that Noah and Mio from another Xenoblade Chronicles game could work best as another dual fighter. I totally see them making it as their own characters, but they could be echoes just because of how similar the mechanic that they would use could be. Next we have Kazuya Mishima, and I'm obviously just going to go with his son, Jin. He has very similar powers to him, and you'd have to do very minimal changes to his moveset to make him distinct. Finally, we have Sora, and I don't know much about Kingdom Hearts, and I would love it if they would add Mickey Mouse as an Echo Fighter to bring more of the Disney aspect into it. But I don't find that to be very likely at all. It was just an idea. Also, before we go, I will say that the Miis don't really have Echo Fighters. They're custom characters, so the best thing that I think they could do is give one standardized fighter with very distinct moves that bring all the moves from the 3 variations of the characters together, and name him Matt after that one very specific and difficult CPU from the boxing game on Wii Sports. So that's my list. What do you think? Are my opinions based, or do you disagree? Also let me know in the comments, do you like my Smash Bros content more, or would you like me to do more variety type of things? I have lots of ideas for both of them, but you let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.